What 3 things should you absolutely try to avoid in your law school personal statement? For those of you who are new, my name is Sydney Montgomery, and I am the CEO of Montgomery Admissions Consulting, where I specialize in working with first-generation and minority law school applicants. I am so excited to be with you today because we're talking about personal statements. Now, it is September, and that means that for most schools, the applications are open. Which is exciting. It's exciting that all of this preparation, all of the time that you have spent working on your applications, we have finally come very close to the finish line. Although I know for some of you, you may still feel like you're at the beginning. Because maybe you haven't studied your essays yet, and that's okay. We can work through that. But I want to talk to you about what 3 things you should absolutely try to avoid in your personal statement when you are trying to showcase your authentic self, when you are trying to really tell your story, when you're trying to have the admissions committee get to know you a little bit more. The first thing that we're going to talk about is the phrase that you should never say. My students already know what the phrase is. I bet there are people in the comments who already know what the phrase is. Oh my goodness, if I had $1 for every time I heard this phrase, it would I could buy a house. And we're actually, I'm in that process, in that stage of my life where I'm looking at trying to buy a house in the near future. And so that's not even like a facetious thing that I'm saying. It's just like, yes, no, actually, probably could. This is down payment money, the number of times I've heard this phrase. The second thing is what you should try to avoid as you work on progressing through the paragraphs in your essay. How do you want your essay to flow, and how should your essay not flow? And then the third thing we're going to talk about is what are the things that you actually just shouldn't say in your personal statement? Maybe it's information that the admissions committee doesn't need. What is that? When are you oversharing? And I'll give you a little hint. It's actually probably not what you're thinking about. I know a lot of students are concerned, I can't write about this topic or I can't write about that topic. And I don't really know that I subscribe to that. I don't believe in operating in absolutes. But I do believe that there are certain ways that you want to write and certain ways that maybe are not putting you in the best light possible. So let's go ahead and dive in. So that first thing, what is the phrase that I just cannot stand? There's some variations. Sounds a little bit like, I want to give voice to the voiceless. My goodness. Listen, I want you to be looking at your personal statement draft right now. If you have the phrase, give voice to the voiceless, like usually it's said just like that, just cross it out. Just say something more specific. Not only is it cliche, I don't know what that means. Because oftentimes when students talk about giving voice to the voiceless, voice to those who don't have a voice, a say to those who have been silenced, a representation to those who don't have it, right? All of those, but really voice to the voiceless. That's the key there. Usually those essays are also overall very vague or not focused on what area of law you want to affect change in. Oftentimes, students in their personal statements will feel like they should spend their personal statement describing qualities that they have that would make them a good lawyer. Maybe. Yes, you should show me that. Please don't tell me. I always say show, don't tell. So show me that through stories and anecdotes. So they'll focus on, okay, these are the things that make me a good lawyer or a good law school student. This is maybe what I've overcome. Your personal statement is not an adversity statement. It's not an overcoming essay. Please just take that piece of advice and throw it in the trash. And then, they'll kind of say like why we need more lawyers or how they want to generally contribute to the legal career or the legal field. And sometimes people even list, like I've seen personal statement drafts where people are like, I want to give voice to the voiceless, whether it's in housing or criminal or education or health and I'm like, you don't know why you want to go to law school. That's what that sentence told me. You have this vague notion of justice for all, Okay, that's another phrase. Take that out. But like you have this vague notion of justice for all and really serving marginalized groups, and you don't actually have any specifics though. And there are a lot of ways to affect change, and there's a lot of ways to affect equity. Equity is really important to me, right? I work really hard to speak on issues of equity and access for college and higher education, law school admissions, but also when it comes to women entrepreneurs, women of faith, breaking down some societal barriers there, women pursuing education of all kind. But I really mostly focus on education and business, right? That's the area that I want to affect change in. There's lots of graduate schools. There's law school, sure. There's public policy school. There's public health. There's education. There are a lot of ways to create policies that will be anti-racist in their efforts in deconstructing systems of oppression. Unpopular opinion, the law is not the only way to do that. It is one way, not the only way. Unpopular opinion, there are many different areas of law that can affect change, but if you don't have an idea of which area of law you want to practice in, you might not be as effective because you won't be as focused, which means you might not actually take advantage of the clinics and the journals and the things that are going to advance your career quicker so that you can make the impact on communities that you want to make. Be specific. Law school is very expensive. Not just with money, although it's very expensive with money, but I know there's lots of ways to go to law school for free. Certainly, there's lots of ways to get scholarships. Over half of my students end up with more than a half tuition scholarship to law school. So even if you took the financial aspect out of it, it's expensive in terms of time. It's 3 years of your life. And it's 4 years if you're doing a part-time program. I mean, it's a lot of time. It's a big investment. It is okay to have clarity and focus on why you want to go. There is this thought that you shouldn't be boxing yourself in, that you shouldn't, be too focused. It's okay to change your mind when you get there. It's okay to be influenced by your surroundings, but you should know why you want to go to school. You should know why you're committing this. There should be something that's pulling you, and it should be more than just this amorphous idea of bringing justice, because to be honest, what schools are concerned about, what I'm concerned about sometimes when I read those phrases, is that you are an idealistic person who doesn't have an understanding of the realism behind being a lawyer. And if you go into law school with idealistic naivete, you might not actually finish law school, because you might get there and realize it is not what you thought it was. I don't want you to go to law school and realize it is not what you thought it was. Right? I want you to go to law school and be like, absolutely, I have a purpose, I have a plan, I know what I'm going to accomplish. But if you just want to give voice to the voiceless, I'm not convinced, right, that you know exactly what you want to do. Usually when I see the phrase, I want to go to law school to give voice to the voiceless, it comes at the end, right, when you're trying to wrap it up. And oftentimes it comes in at the end because you have not done a good enough job walking me through the development of your passion for the law or a particular area. So, I usually say, okay, let's say you're really interested in health law, which I think if I were to go back to law school and do it all again, I love my job, so probably nothing would change. This is the greatest gift that God has given me, to be able to work with students on their journeys, to be able to be part of this moment in your life. But if I were to go back and I said I want to practice law and I want to do it all again, I probably would have focused more on health law. I am someone that has an autoimmune disease. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disease. I have fibromyalgia. I didn't have any of these when I went into law school, but I have found over the last 5 years or so all of the inequities in the healthcare system. There's so much. I could go on for days. But let's say you do want to study healthcare, right? You want to at some point create this tension of like, I've been doing these things and maybe I have done some healthcare policy, or maybe I've done that, but it's not enough. I need the law. I need a legal degree to really take it to the next level, to fully do what I want to do. Because sometimes students don't give me that next step. And I'm like, oh, great, you've affected all this change. Keep doing it. Why are you coming here? Why do you need a law degree? I'm very confused. You seem to be very successful at creating the change that you want to create. So you need to still create that healthy tension, right? And so sometimes when students don't weave in the law or create that tension, that more, that pondering, right? The seeds of, I know that I need to level up. I know that I need a shift in my career in order to further my calling. Then we get this like kind of hodgepodge situation at the end where you're just like, oh, by the way, in the law is the answer. I didn't give you a problem, but the law, it's the answer. And I'm going to give voice to the voiceless. And I am, I'm really passionate about maybe these things. And you just sort of rattle off like a couple of like clinics or whatever. And I do sometimes usually say to my clients that it can be good to put in a couple clinics or programs or that kind of thing at the end, if it makes sense. Some of my clients, their essays are very complete in and of itself and also very long. And we've hit that 2-page mark. You should stop at 2 pages. I don't care what the school really says. They want 2 pages. And so, when we've come to that moment, I'm like, okay, let's see if this works with your essay or not, to throw it in there. But what you don't want to do is finish weak. And so, again, voice to the voiceless, big statements, justice for all, be part of change. And it's like, you were so good until you got to the last paragraph. And now I am annoyed or just kind of like, oh. And that's not the last feeling you want to leave with admissions, right? Like, you want to take them on a journey that ends strong. So I do sometimes write on my students at the end, say it with your chest, because, I need to feel it, right? Like, you need to, make me feel that you want to be a lawyer at the end and what you're going to do with it, right? Future looking is always great. Tell me what you're going to do with your law degree. And say it with conviction. Don't just give me some half-assed sentences, because I can tell that they're half-assed, and then I think you have a half-assed passion, right? Or not fully developed passion, or you haven't even done any research, right? You're going into a $200,000 investment, whether you're paying for it or the school's giving you a scholarship, and a 3-year investment, and if you can't even tell me with conviction and specificity what it is that you want to do with this degree, I have no idea why I would let you in. Your personal statement, your application as a whole. I want you to think of it as like your first case, right? Okay, so you have a premise, something that you're trying to prove to maybe the jury, and that's like your reason to go to law school. I want to go to law school to, help create more equitable and sustainable healthcare policies for women and children. Maybe that's your bylaw statement. Sounds good, right? Now I want you to prove it. And the pieces of evidence are the stories in your personal statement. You should have more than 1, ideally probably 2 to 3. And you're going to show through stories those evidences, so that I am convinced, because I have now walked through your thought process and the imagery, and you've put me in the story with narrative writing, and you've demonstrated to me your character, and I've learned about you. Oh my God, you really do care so much about healthcare policy for women and children, and you've been in this area doing this thing. And I also see why you're not getting an MPH. I see why you need to come to law school, because this is starting to make sense to me. You have convinced me. Convince them, right? If they're not convinced, you have not done your job. This brings me to point number 2, how you don't want to progress your personal statement. So sometimes students just give me a narrative of their resume, sometimes their whole life. We'll just start from age 8 and we'll just go to now, which, depending on how old you are, is a lot of words. Do not just give me a chronological play-by-play of your life or your resume. They have your resume. Remember, I tell you, your personal statement, actually your application as a whole, is like a puzzle. I say that over and over and over and over again. It's actually funny. I had a new client consult the other day. And it's good. I think this must be how teachers feel, or parents. I don't have kids yet. I know a lot of you out there are moms. Shout out to moms. We're going to be doing a series soon on balancing motherhood with the LSAT, balancing motherhood with going to law school, balancing motherhood with being a lawyer. I'm really excited for it. I don't have any kids yet, and I won't until due time, God willing. But I think that this is a demographic that I'm so so inspired by. Because when I think about my life, and I think about how hard it is to take care of me, and then I think about taking care of someone else, I'm just like, y'all are superheroes. Y'all are just like, where are the flowers that I can be giving you, right? So, when we think about your personal statement, when we think about the stories that you're telling and the progression that you're telling, I don't want you to just chronologically go play by play by play into your life. What this oftentimes looks like, and I was telling you that I had a client recently who's told me what I had told her, and so I was meeting with her, and she said, "Oh, I know. You always say that applications are like a puzzle, right? And that your puzzle's got different pieces, and you could be a 10-piece puzzle or a 50-piece puzzle." And I was like, wow, someone was listening. I mean, that's a great feeling. Like I said, I'm sure moms know this feeling. I'm sure teachers know this feeling. It's just like, I talk, someone's listening. Sometimes I talk to you guys, I don't know. But that felt really good. So your application, it's a puzzle. You want to be a bigger puzzle, right? You want to give them as many pieces as you do as possible. But you also don't need repeat pieces. No one needs to write corner pieces, okay? Your resume has a purpose. Your personal statement has a different purpose. Your personal statement should not just be your resume in narrative form. First off, why even have a resume? Second off, I think it comes from this fear. I think there's genuine fear that they will not read your entire application, and that you have to talk about everything that's good and memorable to you on your resume in your personal statement in order for it to matter. That's not true. They actually do read every piece of your application. They read it thoroughly. They love their jobs. Maybe not all of them, but most of the admissions professionals I know, they love their job, right? And so they don't want to just, kind of go through. They're going to go through your application because they know it's a really big deal. And sometimes they even think about, they think about applicants and they really get to know them. I don't know how many of you guys are listening to Navigating Law School Admissions with Miriam and Christy. Shout out to that podcast. It's amazing. If you haven't started listening to season 2, you are sleeping. Definitely go check it out. But what I love about Miriam and Christy and some of the guests is that they really do talk about the impact that the applicants have had on them. And so they read it. Right? And so sometimes what I will see students do is I will see them just give me a narrative play-by-play on their resume, but not all of those stories relate to their why law statement, right? Not all of those stories relate to the reason why they're pursuing law. It might not relate to healthcare policy for women and children, for example. But also you cannot fit 12 stories into your personal statement. You have 2 pages. I want you to understand the difference between how things are written on your resume and how things are written on your personal statement. On your resume, you're telling me usually what you've done, right? I did these things. You just got some active verbs using, quantifiable descriptions. It's great. In your personal statement, I want you to show me a moment. So if you were working at a senator's office and you were, picking up the phone call and, constituents were calling in and you were drafting things, I want you to show me a phone call that really mattered. I want you to show me something that you worked on that made an impact. I want you to tell me what you thought about it. How did this continue to push you in the path towards law school? How did this shape what you thought about an issue? How did it change or challenge what you thought about an issue? It's okay if you had a thought one time and then you had an experience that kind of changed your thoughts. Take me through that. Let me understand who you are as a person through your examples. Choose your moments. You cannot tell them everything. This is not an autobiography. Some of you have lived enough for several books, okay? But you cannot show me all of that in a 2-page personal statement. So instead, be judicious. I have seen maybe up to 4 stories work well. Maybe you have some context and then you have 3 really substantial stories and then a conclusion. That's a perfectly fine way to go about it, but they should be moments. And I can always tell when students start to list. there at this organization, I did this and this and this, and I was this and this and this, and I was this and this and this, and I was this and this and this, and I asked them, I said, is this on your resume? Yes? Great, take it out here. I don't want to see it. Because what you've done is you've caused me to disengage, right? I want to stay engaged through the entire story. I want to be captivated by the moments. But when you start going into a list of your accomplishments, and there's ways to show your accomplishments in your personal statement without listing, but when you start going into a list of your accomplishments instead, I become disengaged. I start glossing over it, and then you've kind of lost me. We're not making that impact. So please, 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 your personal statement is not just a chronological retelling of your life or even your resume. And some of you really do have a chronicle retelling of your entire life, which brings me to the third point today. What is the information that you don't want to tell me? Some of you really are very honest people. And I love that. You're going to make a great lawyer. But you don't need to tell me about the time that you thought you were going to be a doctor, and then you thought you were going to be a dentist, and then you thought you were going to be a ballerina, but then maybe you weren't very good at ballet. I wasn't very good at ballet. So then you said, well, I'm not going to be a ballerina, so maybe I will be a pianist. Oh, just kidding. You know what? The law seems good. Don't do that. Do not walk me through all of the other careers that you thought about before becoming a lawyer. Remember when I said that this was like a case and you got a jury and we got some pieces of evidence? All of you have 3 to 4 solid pieces of evidence, moments that you can weave together in narrative form that connect to the reason for why you want to go to law school. Make it tight. Make it a great case. Do not insert doubts. If we go back to the entire thing about, it's a case, right? So you're trying to present the case, I want to go to law school so I can be a healthcare, do healthcare policy for women and children. Let's just say that's my example today. The other side, because in a case there's always two sides, the other side is trying to prove that you don't know why you want to go to law school, you don't have any focus, and you're not ready. That is the other side. When you tell me all of the ways you were confused and didn't know if the law was for you, and you weren't really sure, you never really thought you'd be a good lawyer. I have seen that so many times. I never really considered the law. Why are you telling me this? You are just giving evidence to the other side. They don't need your help. The other side is not the side that you want to be giving evidence to. I only want you to focus on the stories that create this tight narrative so that I feel convicted in your reasons. Because honestly, if you're going through this process, this is not an easy process. If you've been studying for the LSAT for 6 months, 12 months, 3 months, whatever, you're not just doing that because got nothing better to do. Like, this is a hard process. You have put time and money into this process. So I know that you are convinced that this is what you want to do. But you now have to tell the admissions. You have to make them feel it too. And all the words that I see when students send me essays and they just continually tell me, I didn't really think I'd be a good lawyer. I never really thought about this before. I really wanted to be a doctor, but that didn't work out. Like, stop. Don't tell me this. This does not belong in your personal statement. Your personal statement is for you to explain to me and be authentic, but explain to me why going to law school is the next logical step in your journey. Please do not use that phrase either. Show me, don't tell me. And, why the law is for you. What is it that you're trying to do? So, to kind of recap, there are 3 things that you should really try to avoid in your personal statement. The first is this phrase, being a voice for the voiceless, and any kind of derivative phrase of that. Because usually when you say that, it comes in the midst of a personal statement that's very vague on why you want to go to law school and what area you want to go to law school. So I would rather instead you say, I want to increase representation for women and children who aren't necessarily able to advocate for themselves as much in the healthcare industry. Do you see how I said voice to the voiceless without saying that? And do you see how much stronger that was? Like, who is it that you want to serve? Who do you want to advocate for? Who do you want to hold accountable for? Whose voice is the voiceless? Give them some identity in your essay. And what are they trying to say? What's the voice that they want to have heard? Tell me that instead. Don't just say voice for the voiceless. That's lazy writing. We can do better than that. The second point is that you do not want your personal statement to just be a narrative of your resume or a narrative of your entire life, because some of you are also doing that. I'm going to really remind you that your personal statement is 2 pages. I cannot tell you the number of 6-page personal statements that have come across my desk lately. Please don't do that. 2 pages double spaced, not 2 pages single spaced, not 2 pages 8-point font, 2 pages double spaced, 11 or 12-point font, Times New Roman or Arial. Fun fact, Times New Roman is a little smaller than Arial, so just stick with Times New Roman. Absolutely fine, right? But do not give me a narrative of your whole life. Do not give me a narrative of your resume. Really focus on those key moments that are related to your reason for going to law school, the area that you want to affect change in, and show me by connecting these 3 to 4 moments together. And then that last point is that don't tell me that you weren't sure you wanted to go to law school. That completely undercuts your entire case. Don't tell me that you wanted to be a doctor first. Don't tell me all of the things that I don't need to know that are going to cause me to have doubts now about your surety. I want you to be convincing in the stories that you tell. I want you to be authentic and truthful. But I also want you to know that you are probably more sure than you're giving yourself credit for. Not all of the stories have to be, I knew I wanted to go to law school. That's not how life works. Sometimes you don't know. But maybe if there's a particular area of law that's driving you, there are key moments in that area. There are key moments that you can focus on. And through your essay, we're understanding how this passion for this issue developed. And then ultimately the tension that's created when you realized you needed to go to law school in order to fulfill your calling. As a reminder, you guys know that you can always find me at law.smontgomeryconsulting.com. If you're not already subscribed to the YouTube channel, make sure that you like this video, share this video, subscribe, rate the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, Break Into Law School. There's also the Mindful Prayers for Students podcast. We're in season 2. If you need more mindfulness and encouragement in your day, definitely check there. And then if you're looking to work with me, I have the hourly consulting, which is 50% off for LSAC fee waiver students. I have personal statement course, also 50% off for fee waiver students. And then we're running our last boot camps of the cycle, the accelerated boot camps, and then I still have a couple spots for private consulting. All right, guys. I love you all. I love being here with you. I cannot wait to see you next week. And if you have any questions, don't forget to submit them to bit.ly/breakintolawschool. I will see you guys very soon.